Hello everyone, welcome to another edition of Hometown Heroes. I'm Mike Kenichi, and it's a very special episode tonight because this is the 10th anniversary of Hometown Heroes. I'll tell you folks, it's hard to believe that when we started this in May of 2015, we would be here 10 years later, but it has been so much fun. The basis of our show has always been to honor those people who have impacted their towns and communities. Well, tonight's guests, they are living proof of that. They characterize it, they exemplify it, and it is my honor to have them both on. They are both currently fourth grade teachers at the elementary school, Elizabeth School in Shelton. It is my honor to introduce to you Toni Pannella and Dan Ebert. And Toni and Dan, I want to thank you both for coming on today. It's a real honor for me.
Yeah, thanks, Mike.
Thanks for having us.
So, Toni, I'll start with you. And I don't want to say that you were born to be a teacher, but you were in a lot of ways born into teaching. So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, my mother was a teacher in Shelton for about 30 years, I would say. So she started when I was little, probably close to going to kindergarten. She got back into substitute teaching, and she was trying to get a job, but there weren't a lot available back then in the early 80s. So she ended up doing a lot of long-term subs, and she would float around to all the schools and so I got to see that firsthand while I was growing up. She worked really hard, and it was the first thing I wanted to be. I was a teacher, like a lot of kids want to do what their parents do. And but the more I saw her work, I was like, this is crazy. Like, I'm not going to be a teacher. Who would sign up for this?
Yeah.
So I did change my mind a whole bunch of other times and ended up going for my undergrad in not education before I went back to it to get my master's. So.
And I don't think that you're ever a kid. You don't go through childhood without pretending to play school at a young age, to pretend you're a teacher.
Yeah.
So, I mean, did you find yourself doing that with your mother now, or did you have siblings as well?
I have an older brother.
Right.
And he's about 3.5 years older than me. But yeah, growing up, I definitely did. I had, all your friends would come over and you'd play school, to your like Cabbage Patch Dolls and stuffed animals and make the worksheets and make a little attendance thing. And I remember doing all the things.
And Toni, a lot of things, nowadays, a lot of things we see is parents will bring their child to school, especially teachers. They'll kind of let them kind of sit in the back row, kind of,
Observe.
shadow them. Yeah. So let me ask you, did your mother ever take you to school as a young kid? So talk about that experience.
I would say every year, I didn't miss school a lot. I always had to go to school. I wasn't absent a lot. But I would get like one free absence a year where I could go to work with her. So we'd plan a day that I could go hang out with her, usually probably in the spring, like towards the end of the school year.
Yeah.
And I would go and get to hang out and watch her and help from the time I was pretty little till I would say like almost through high school. I did it. So yeah, that's kind of funny that you asked that.
And think about this, Toni. Your mother, when she was teaching, no internet, no computers. I'm sure there were typewriters, obviously. But in a lot of ways, everything, you still had different books for different subjects. Yeah. So, I mean, she didn't have the access that teachers do now. But I also feel like if she had to do it all over again, she'd still do it the way she did. So,
absolutely.
I mean, it just seemed like a different way of teaching back then than it is now, but still a better way.
Yep. She got a little bit of the computer stuff too. She retired, I want to say around 2011 when Lafayette School closed. 2010, 2011 maybe. When Lafayette School closed and Perry Hill opened is when she retired. So we got to teach together in the same district at least for close to like 10 years, I would say. 12 years? About 12 years, I guess. So she missed all the smart boards and the Chromebooks and all that, but we were still starting to get into like having our like own desktops in our classroom and emailing and access to like, making your worksheets easier and things like that. So she was pretty tech savvy. I'd say she's pretty tech savvy now.
Well, we're going to get to more of that in a few minutes. But Dan, it's funny, since I've known you, I could tell that you have a passion for music. Now, we're going to get to how your introduction to teaching started. But as a young kid, I mean, I have to believe there was a part of you that wanted to be Paul McCarthy or John Lennon or Axl Rose.
For sure,
or,
for
you know,
sure.
Brett Michaels. So talk about
Yeah,
your
so
love for
that
music.
came about. So I started taking piano lessons in first grade. I really got into music like fourth and fifth grade when I started playing the trumpet. Middle school is when I kind of had to like sort of make a choice. I was into sports, but you know, baseball was like the last sport that I really kind of hung on to. In eighth grade, like I'd rather go home and play music than be practicing baseball. So it was middle school when I kind of, you know, made that choice. And, you know, thinking of being a teacher at that time was like not even a thought that would have crossed my mind. It was always like music first. And it's just funny how I kind of worked my way into teaching, just kind of by chance.
Right. Now let me ask you, were there any musicians that you emulated or idolized as a young kid that got your love for music going?
Yeah, I was into like punk rock in middle school and high school, and then the beginning of high school I started to get into the more like acoustic genre of things. I happened to have I went to high school with a cousin of John Mayer, so I got to go to one of those concerts with his family, and that was a huge motivation of trying to do more music things after seeing like the behind the scenes of that in high school. So that kind of led me into you know, trying to go down different avenues in college, anything related to music.
Right. And I know Toni grew up in Shelton, but whereabouts did you grow up?
I grew up in Trumbull.
Trumbull, right.
Yeah.
So not far from each other,
No.
you know, kind of next door in a lot of ways. But just talk about going to Trumbull Elementary School. What was the experience like for you?
The elementary school that I went to is ironically the one that my wife works at and where we met. And I don't know, it was great. I have lifelong friends from elementary school. It's set up very similar to the way Shelton is. You know, there's 5 or 6 elementary schools per town. I guess a little different than Shelton. All the kids go to the same school for like their middle school years.
Yeah.
Where in Trumbull, the school I was at, we got split for middle school. So like half of your friends would end up going to the other side of town, and then everyone would come back together for high school.
Toni, I find it ironic, or in a lot of ways interesting, that where you are teaching right now is also where you went to elementary school. Now, Elizabeth Shelton School had to be so different back then. I think it was K through 6. Am I correct?
It was K to 6 while I was there, and even my first couple of years teaching, it was still K to 6 before Perry Hill opened. But yeah, I lived like a mile down the street where my parents still live. And yeah, growing up, I remember even as a young kid, you would walk and ride your bike everywhere, and me and my friend would ride our bikes down to play at the playground, like on the weekends when no one was in school. And
was that Tire Town? Everyone talks about Tire Town.
yeah, there was like the fish.
Oh, okay.
It's like fish thing. Yeah, Tire Town, the bees.
Everyone always talks about
the
that.
stagnant water. Yeah, very 80s. So yes, so I do teach in the school that I went to, which is kind of crazy because as I've moved my classroom even around a lot, I've been in rooms where I'm like, oh, this was my second grade classroom, or like, so it is kind of crazy. And even when I started working, some of the teachers were still there that I had while I was in elementary school before they retired. So that was pretty crazy too, getting to work with some of my
and I would think
former
one
teachers.
teacher in particular, and I apologize, I can't recall her first name, but Mrs. Green, I'm sure she was. Was
Kathy
she?
Green,
Yes, she had to be there when you were a student.
She was not at Elizabeth Shelton though. I think she worked at. She was at one of the other schools when I started there, but it might have been when Perry Hill got closed that a lot of teachers got shuffled all around the district and like moved into the other schools and stuff to fill everybody's positions. And I want to say she ended up at Elizabeth Shelton around then. I don't think she was there from when I actually started, but yeah, she definitely was in the system for a long time too.
Right. It's funny, lots of times as you're a kid, one minute you think you want to play baseball for the Yankees, the next you want to be a musician, you want to play in a band, you want to be a teacher, whatever it might be. I mean, what were some of the different career choices, not choices, but things you wanted to do as kids throughout your childhood? I mean, I'm sure there were like you flip-flopped back and forth multiple times.
Yeah,
How many times did you change
my dad was a police officer growing up, so I'm sure there were a couple times where I probably would have said that. I did get a chance to go to work with him when I was older, like in high school, and go for ride-alongs, and I definitely realized then that would not be my thing, which is good. I think that everyone should be able to like go experience just everything just to see what sticks. Yeah, I probably said baseball player for a little while.
Yeah.
And then once middle school and high school came around, it was full on music.
Right. And Toni, you had a lot of different hobbies as a kid. I mean, was there one in particular? I mean, it seems like to me too, you had a lot of creativity with art and stuff. I mean, different things like that. Was there ever a time?
I danced.
Yeah.
I did basketball a little while in elementary school, but I didn't really do any sports. But I was on the pom-pom squad
Right.
in high school at Shelton High. And I danced competitively and danced at the Jill Chase Dance Studio in
Right.
Shelton for like 10 or 12 years or something like that. But when I graduated from high school, I was going for pharmacy.
Yeah.
Actually was a pharmacy major. And I went to Western New England College, which is now Western New England University. And but I only did like one semester of pharmacy. It was so hard. I was like, this is not for me.
Yeah.
So I switched to communications and business management, and thinking I would do TV and journalism.
Right.
So I did an internship at Fox 61,
Oh, wow.
and I spent a whole semester, I got to dabble a little in like, writing some reporting, doing some reporting, and, going out on the road and interviewing people and, answering phones and doing all that kind of stuff too. But after that experience was over, I was like, yeah, this isn't for me either. I don't want to do this. So when I graduated, I was working for a bank as a bank teller all through college. So I stuck with that, and I ended up moving to Boston after I graduated, and they were able to transfer me from Connecticut offices to the Boston offices.
Yeah.
And I helped open like a customer service center, like a call center.
Right.
And was like training people at this call center, and I did that for like a whole year, and then I was like, no, I'm not loving this either. So I was like, maybe I do want to go back into teaching. Maybe I do want to be a teacher after all. So I called home and was like, coming home.
Right.
Who wants to pay for my master's?
And I think a lot of times, though, even when you go to college and you think you want to do one thing, it changes for you. I know so many people that have changed different things. They went originally to be a social worker, and then they changed and they're a chemist, things like that. You're never going to, when you get there right away, really know what you want until like you experience the college life, like what it's like, the different opportunities you have. So it's really not, unusual to, go in thinking you want one thing and then kind of deciding you want something else.
We see it a lot with teachers that come in. We joke about
sure,
how many of us have bachelor's degrees in other fields that are not education, and then everybody got their
Right.
master's in education. So it is kind of funny that, people always start out on a different career path and then brings them back,
And let me ask you both. I mean, were there times when, like anything else, when you're a kid, you're a little naive a lot. You think teachers are the bad person, or they're giving you too much homework, or they're doing too much of this. I mean, did that ever, like, when you had a certain teacher say, I'm never doing this someday, like, this isn't for me? I mean, did you ever go through that at all? Probably more so when you were in high school.
Yeah, early high school when I was, everyone's trying to figure it out. I definitely went through that pump kid phase where like, I didn't want to do my homework and things like that.
Yeah.
And looking back on it, I had like I definitely, once I decided to go back for elementary ed, I had one of those, just kind of revelations, and going back and like thinking of all these teachers and I had a totally different spin on it. Going back and looking, like these teachers that I used to look at in a different way, and now that I wanted to be a teacher, I'm like, oh wow, like you put yourself in their shoes and you respect them totally on a different level.
It's a lot harder than it looks.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, I think the one thing too that, at least for me anyway, that I realized is somebody who I might have thought was tough as a teacher, I'm kind of grateful for that, because you have to be a little tough. I'm not saying you have to yell at the kids or anything like that, but you have to make them understand that when you're in class, you got to focus, you got to pay attention. It's very important. So I always look back on it, and I think like the teachers I had, and I'm like, wow, I didn't like her so much when I had her, but God, I'm so grateful for the lessons she taught me. And I think that happens a lot with any kid. You think that somebody who might have been hard on you, they weren't really hard on you. They were kind of preparing you and shaping you for how you're going to be as an adult.
Yeah, you got to push them, you want them to be the best version of themselves. So you got to, sometimes it's a little tough love that comes along with it.
Right. So Dan, I know you were in the marching band, right, in high school. And one of the cool things you got to do is your band got to march for George Bush's inauguration.
They did. So it's always like the big joke. It sounds way cooler than it really was. It was like a rainy, cold day. And, you prepare this whole moment. And we walked by him. Our band director was like, take a minute, stop playing. Your friends will play for you. Make sure you get a glance over, because this is like a rare thing. So, I'm marching by him, and I look over, and he's blowing his nose. So, I'm like, oh, this is the big moment. I get to, so I always joke with the kids, like, oh, I played for the president, but, I got to walk by him in the cold rain while he was blowing his nose.
Right. And Dan, we're going to get to your story, which is just tremendous. But Toni, I love this story. I think you started interning at Sunnyside, correct?
Yeah.
And what's interesting to me for both of you is how you met your significant others. And Toni, what's really cool about yours is not only did you meet him, but he did something very special one day. So talk about that moment a little bit.
I know this story. When I was actually teaching second grade, it was my first year with my own classroom. I was doing a long-term sub-position, but it went like the whole entire year. So it was Valentine's weekend, and DJ, my husband DJ, had asked to come in and do a little art lesson with them, because he's an artist. He went to art school. Yeah. And he wanted to make little cartoon characters out of like the letters of the alphabet. So I was like, all right, you do your little party. It was like Friday. I was like, you can come in at the end of the day and do this. I can give you like an hour to do a little craft thing with the kids. Yeah. So he comes in, he does the lessons, we pass out all the Valentines. I got to get them ready to go home, because it was like dismissal. And he's like, wait, I have one more thing. I brought Miss Baldwin a Valentine, but it broke on the way here, and I need everybody to help me put the Valentine back together again. So the kids were like, okay. And I'm thinking, really? We don't really have a lot of time for this. And I'm thinking, like, I have no idea. I did not see this coming at all. So I was like, okay, hurry it up. So he goes and he gives everybody like a big puzzle piece. Yeah. And they go back to the reading table, and I was like cleaning up, and he's helping them put this thing together. And then all of a sudden it got like really quiet. And one of my little girls, I'll never forget, she said, Miss Baldwin, this is for you. No. And I like walked back there and was like looking at it, and it was a big heart, and it said, Miss Baldwin, will you marry me on it? And he was down on one knee, but I'm like trying to process everything that's happening. He's down on one knee. He has like the ring out. Yeah. Some of my kids started crying. They were like, it was like a lot.
And these are like second graders.
Yeah, they were second graders. Yeah. I think they thought like I was leaving. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, oh, Miss Baldwin's getting married, so maybe that means she's going to leave and not be our teacher anymore. Yeah. So I was like, no, I'm not going anywhere. So that was our big story. And then word got back to the office pretty quickly that this had all gone down in my classroom. So the principal at the time, Ann Petro, she came like running down, and she was like, you got to go to Lafayette School and tell your mother. Does she know? And I was like, no, my mother doesn't know. She's like, you guys need to go to Lafayette School before word gets back. And she finds out through somebody else that I just got engaged, because she was right down the street working at the time. So we like hopped in the car and we drove down to Lafayette. We're like running through the school to go tell her, like, Mom, I just got engaged. Yeah.
And now let me ask you this, Toni. Were you in the beginning, when he's doing all this, before you knew what was going on, you're thinking there's not going to be enough time? Were you getting frustrated with him? Like, okay, DJ, you're taking too long.
Yeah, like this is, I don't know what cockamamie thing you had planned for today. Wrap it up.
But I'll tell you what, looking back on it, obviously, probably 2 minutes after you said yes, you were like, wow, he did it perfectly
Yep.
because you never saw it coming. And you want to be
No.
surprised.
Yeah.
You don't want to just know. So,
Yeah.
I mean, that's a special
really
moment and
special.
something you got to experience with your students.
Yeah.
Now, did you break down or did you hold it together?
No, I like had like a full-blown panic attack almost.
Yeah.
Like I was like hyperventilating. Like I think I even said at one point, I think I'm going to pass out. Like I felt like I was going to faint. Yeah. Because I was really shocked.
Well, I got to believe, Toni, that that right there said, I got to be a teacher long term. You're meant to do this, you know, right there alone. And Dan, your story is kind of wild as well because, again, where Toni, I think by the time she got out of college, she kind of had a good idea where she was headed. But even when you got out of college, you really still had no desire to be a teacher. So talk about that a little bit.
So I always taught music lessons.
Yeah.
So the teaching was always kind of there, but it never really occurred to me like to be a classroom teacher. So I was just doing random jobs. I started substitute teaching just to try something out with no real intention of being a teacher. And then when I was at my elementary school, the principal called me in and they were desperately looking for a long-term music sub for the last 2 months of school. And she heard that I went to like a music school. So my undergrad, my bachelor's is in audio media technology. So it was like recording music, live sound. So she heard that it was music like, and it was like under the threshold that I could like sub for 2 months. So I tried that out. It was awesome. My older sister's best friend teaches there, and that she is my wife's like at work best friend kind of thing.
Yeah.
So she kind of she got us together. I met her at while I was subbing there, and I got the bug. I remember during that time, I remember exactly where I was. I was sitting in the faculty room. I remember like which teachers were in the room when they like sat me down and they were like, "Hey, you're kind of good at this. This is like it's natural to you.
Yeah.
Like you should think about being like just a classroom teacher." And like I just remember that like exact moment because I never really thought of it, and it was just like a huge like someone else kind of giving you like, we could see you doing this was pretty eye-opening, and that like changed my whole trajectory of my life, I guess. So it's pretty wild how it kind of happened.
That really is. And let me ask you, like, obviously the first couple years you start teaching, you really want to do as well as you can. You want to get the respect of not only your administrators, but also your classroom. And what I mean by that is they know that this is my teacher, this is what they expect from me. Now, when you're a young kid, he or she knows that he or she's got to have their homework done. They got to get their work done, things like that. But really, in a lot of ways, did you both put a little pressure on yourself early on to make, because you're trying to establish yourself as a long-term teacher. Did you find the first couple years difficult, or were you just so motivated it didn't matter?
I found it harder. I definitely used to like take home a lot more work and like you were always trying to like come up with, different projects and activities to do with the kids, and that's changed a lot now because, as curriculums changed and what we're required to do, there's not as much time for that as there used to be. But yeah, I remember like the pressure of like grading papers and doing lesson plans and taking work home, and was a lot more in the beginning than it is now as a more veteran teacher.
Oh, for sure. I remember. Yeah, it was stressful, but like luckily, like I think you had your mom to lean on, and I had my wife to lean on for that sort of thing. But I definitely remember like it's one of those like you don't know what you don't know sort of things. Like I don't even know what question to ask. I don't like of like if I get stuck on something. Yeah. But here we are.
And Toni, obviously you leaned on your mother a lot in the beginning, but how was she? Like, I mean, would she critique you, give you constructive criticism? I mean, like, did you?
She would. We would definitely. We would talk shop a lot. We still do sometimes. And there was one year where we both taught first grade.
Right.
So she was first grade at Lafayette, which is what she did. The majority of her career was first grade. And then, the 1 year that I was in first grade at Elizabeth Shelton, it was my second year at Elizabeth Shelton School, and first grade was First grade's tough.
Yeah.
First grade was tough. And I'm thinking like, wow, my mom's been teaching. Like I'd go home and call her and be like, Mom, what are you doing? This is so hard.
Yeah.
Like, how have you been teaching this grade for this long? Like, I was like, first grade? I don't think first grade's for me. I need to move up. Like, that's when I was realizing, like, I wanted a little bit older kids. But yeah, she would help me a lot. I would, ask for advice and am I doing this right? And she would have to pep talk me a little bit, talk me off the ledge. But yeah, that actually, the year I taught first grade was her last year in first grade because she switched to be the reading consultant.
Oh, wow.
After that year that I did first grade with her, because she was ready for a change at that point too, to kind of get out of the classroom and do something else. So she became the reading consultant at Lafayette for the remainder of her teaching career, because I think I talked her out of it. Which is a little bit funny.
And Dan, I know, weren't you a read-in tutor the first year you were at
so that
Elizabeth
was my
Shelton?
foot in the door at Elizabeth Shelton.
So let me ask you this. It seems like to me you prefer, though, to be in the classroom. Like you like working with, a grade level and a group of kids as to just being strictly a reading instructor. So just talk about the difference between the two for you.
Yeah, for sure. It was nice to have a small group, and I mean, taking smaller groups within your classroom is great. So there's pros and cons to each, definitely. I like having the whole group, just getting to be around more kids and learning about each one of them. I don't know if I would ever go into to be a math person or
like an interventionist.
Yeah. And Toni, I find this remarkable that, think about this, you're in your 27th year of teaching, correct?
Yep, 27.
And so if I do my math right, you spent 7 years as a student at Elizabeth Shelton, because kindergarten through 6.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So 34 years you've been associated with that school. So I mean,
that's crazy.
I mean, talk about that, because
I never thought about it that way.
I mean, a good amount of your life has been spent at that school. Talk about, and we'll get to the teaching aspect, but just talk about being a part of that building, because in a lot of ways, I mean, you've probably been at that building longer than anyone that's right now currently teaching at that school.
Yeah, I think I am most veteran in terms of just years there at this point. But yeah, I remember you have weird little memories of things. Like I remember when I started kindergarten there, my brother must have been in third grade. And he would walk me to my classroom because I was a big baby and I didn't like going to kindergarten. Yeah. I was 4 when I started kindergarten.
Wow.
So you're little and it was a lot. And he'd walk me to my room and I would cry and wouldn't want him to leave me. But I remember being in that room, that kindergarten room, that's still a kindergarten room, Anita's room. Yeah. And I remember nap time and all the things in there that, you would do, and playing with all the toys and little kitchen that they had.
Was that before the music annex? I don't know when they put that in. The music room, that T at the very end, second grade.
Oh, yeah, no, that wasn't there.
Yeah.
Those rooms weren't there down there yet. It ended at the end of the first grade rooms. Yeah, that's why. There wasn't the cafeteria.
Oh,
we ate in the gym. It was just the gym and the tables were in the gym.
Tell you this way, Toni, when you retire, you got something you could do. You could write a whole book about your years at Elizabeth Shelton.
Yeah, all
that
the
that really says a lot, Toni. Yeah. And let me ask you this. One thing that I think people forget is teachers don't just come in, for you guys, you don't just come in at 8:30 in the morning and then leave at 4:30 in the afternoon. There's a lot of preparation. You have homework just like the kids do, because you have to have lesson plans, you have to prepare and things like that. So it's a lot of work. So just talk about the grind of being a teacher sometimes, because I mean, you got to look professional, obviously. So you got to wake up early in the morning. Yeah. So there's a lot that goes into being a teacher, and not just in the classroom, because you do a lot of work when you're not at the school as well.
Yeah. Some people go in early, and then some people will come in more during their contractual time, but then they'll stay a little later. And I'm sure some people are taking things home too. It's kind of whatever works for you, but we tend to go in early.
Yeah.
I tend to I'm on that schedule still of I'm going to get up and just go and, go in an hour early every day. And then I try to leave at like 4 when our day is done, but sometimes I am there until like 4:30 by the time you kind of pick up a little and put things away, or maybe you got to go make a few more copies, or you got to finish correcting something. And I don't like taking the work home anymore, so I'd rather get it done there and leave it there, at the end of the day. But yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot to try and fit in during your one, 25-minute prep period that you have Like, you can't get it all done during your one little free period that you have. It's like nearly impossible to do it all. So you have to do it during other times during the day,
Right. One of the things I wanted to talk to you both about is, obviously you have great relationships with a lot of the fellow teachers there, but you both teach 4th grade, and there's always going to be a bond with the 4th grade teachers. One in particular, I know she's no longer at Elizabeth Shelton School, but I know you had a close relationship with, was Amanda Wandenshawn. Great person. I mean, just a wonderful person. Then, of course, you've got Janine Quick. I apologize not knowing Mrs. McLean's last name, or first name, first grade. Yeah. But you're going to have that bond with them because you're going to lean on each other. You're going to go to each other for advice and things like that. So just talk about kind of Janine and Amanda and Grace. Talk about that a little bit.
We try to lighten the mood a lot. We're silly. We're silly at work, right?
We were probably the team that, like, the 3 of us at least have been together.
Yeah, me, you, and Janine. Have been together. Probably the longest. So yeah, we do stuff outside of school sometimes. We'll still get together with Amanda and have team 4 dinners every once in a while and catch up with her. But yeah, you need the camaraderie to get through the day, especially when you're having a bad day.
Oh, for sure.
We've had some days where you're like, all right, you gotta check in with each other to make sure you're okay.
And Dan, I really love you have like a funny relationship with Denise Quinlan. She's like your school mom.
Sure. We started the same year together at ESS.
But Dan, think about this. Like, you really are, you're in your 13th year, correct?
Yep.
Yeah. So you're still kind of the baby of ESS in a lot of ways. So these teachers seem to really look out for you, which is great. And Denise, she's kind of been like that mother to you. So just talk about having the support of your fellow teachers and administrators, office people, because again, it never happens by yourself. It takes a team to make it work. So talk 100%. About that a little bit.
That was something I learned early on. That's something that really attracted me towards teaching, was just the camaraderie behind it. And that's what, when I met my wife, her team was like really, really close, and her school was really close. And when I first joined ESS, it was very much like that too. A lot of happy hours, a lot of getting together, and just feeling comfortable enough to go ask anyone at any time for help for anything, and just be willing to go out and help anyone. So, I love going around and helping people with technology.
Yeah, I was going to say, like the tech guy.
Yeah, I don't know. It's our own little community. So I feel like, they take care of me, so I want to make sure I go take care of them. When I first started, we had a close relationship with the office. We still do. But Keith Manning, he had...
great guy. Yeah.
He was close with another secretary we had, Betty. Yeah. And so that was like his work mom, and like I was like the other guy in the building. So Denise and I started at the same time. So that was kind of like, it became like my work mom sort of thing. So...
Yeah, and I think that's the thing that's invaluable about teaching is the relationships you make, because, listen, you might be friends with people you went to school with and still see them from time to time, but you go your separate ways. A lot of them move away. Some of them don't move, but when you have kids and you're married and things like that, you do lose contact. So this becomes kind of like your new family in a lot of ways, and 100%. Having the support of all of them. And then I think of like administrators. Toni, you've been doing it 27 years, so you probably went through, I know there was Bev Belden and obviously Jamie Weber.
Fusty. Yeah. I was with Ann Petra at Sunnyside, and then it was Steve Fusty, and then Bev, and then Jamie.
Right.
So four principals.
Right. So I mean, having the support of them, and again, I mean, that's crucial, and they always do support you guys, and it just makes going to work a lot easier. It's never fun if you feel like you're stressed all the time, and you have their support. And the kids, just from what I've observed over these last 10 years, these kids really do, they don't just look at you as teachers, but they look at you as role models. And that's got to make you both feel good to know that kids feel that way about you.
Yeah, we do.
For sure.
Yeah.
We're like rock stars.
We're like rock stars.
Right. So let me ask you
Bring it
this.
back.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. What would you say is the most important part about teaching during the school year? I mean, you go through different marking periods, obviously, but what do you think has to be the most crucial time where you have to make sure that you're on top of your game?
I think the most important part of it as a whole is just having the rapport and the trust with the students, and developing a relationship with them where they're gonna respect you and trust you.
Mm-hmm.
And
I think the trust and consistency, just knowing that you're going to be there to help.
Right. And that kind of carries over to the whole classroom management thing, because if they can respect you and trust you, and they're listening or willing to listen, then that's half the battle right there.
And like anything else, listen, you have to be teachers, and you can't quote unquote be their friend, but you can still be, like I said, a role model, which is most important. And for you, Dan, I'll start with you. I've had kids over the years always ask me when they come to visit, is Mr. Ebert still here? And I'm like, no, he leaves at 4. Can you ask him to stay till 5? And I said, well, I'll try. But it's got to feel good when you have past students that say that. And let me ask you this, Dan, how hard is it, because you spend a whole year with these kids, 181 days, how hard is it when you're with a group that entire year and they're moving on, because you feel that loss like they feel the loss of leaving the school?
Yeah, the last day of school is a very odd feeling, and it hasn't really changed since the first time I experienced it. The first couple of years, I kind of had a tough day on the after leaving school, because it's just so abrupt. And you're getting your report cards done, you're getting all these your end of the year evaluations done, you're trying to get all this stuff done with the kids. You think the end of the year you pop in a movie, but it's bam, 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 and then all of a sudden it's just gone. Mm-hmm. And it's it's summertime, but I don't know, that couple hours of adjusting right after school gets out, it's really tough.
Yeah, when they run out the door on that last day.
It's
and
very
you're
bittersweet.
Trying to say goodbye to everybody, and they're excited,
Yeah.
and you're oh my gosh, I'm not gonna see them.
And you're always gonna get always gonna get students that cry, especially the ones that are leaving.
Oh, 100%.
I mean, you get students who are in second grade and they're leaving their teacher that they really admired, and that's tough for them, and they cry. But these kids are leaving the school for the last time. So you both have experienced that a lot, where you see these kids walking out the door and you do see tears, and it's like you said, it is bittersweet. Like anything else, you're human. You may be adults, but I'm sure when you get in your car, it hits you a little bit.
Yeah, it is. It's sad to see them go. Some of them, you're sad just because they're sad too. You know,
100%,
yeah. And Toni, I mean, I could think of one student. I won't mention his name, but recently he had said to me, I'm really glad I had her because she made me pay attention more to math, and I never did before, and now I do. So I really appreciate that. Now, this kid is in 7th grade right now, so for him to tell me that now at 7th grade, that's got to make you feel good, because what you're trying to do is you really are trying to shape them in the real world. That's what you have to do. And both of you, in a lot of ways, they're going to Perry Hill and they're 4th graders. The work's going to get harder. They're going to have different teachers. So in a lot of ways, you're trying to prepare these kids to the next level, which school gets tougher. And so your job isn't always easy. So when you have kids come back and say things like that, that's got to make what you both do so rewarding.
It is. It is. I love when the older kids will come back, or when we see them when they come for their graduation walk at the end of the year. And they'll come back and see you. And I mean, you hope at some point they realize that what you were trying to do for them, you know?
Yeah, that gets lost in the day-to-day grinds. You know, you're stressed and trying to get a lesson done, and you're the overall thing. You know, you want them to succeed in life.
Right. It's there is a reason we're trying to make you do your homework, and make you keep track of all your stuff, and you're gonna need that. As you get older.
Right. And the good thing about both of you is before that bell rings and they're just getting into class, schoolwork hasn't started yet. They're kind of getting adjusted, putting their things away. you both do make sure that you make it fun for them. You let them kind of, Dan, you play guitar, and you'll kind of let them see like something you're playing.
You're playing music.
Yeah. And Toni, same thing. Like
I'll stand in the hallway, greet them.
Greet them in the hallway and things like that. So you make sure you make it fun because, again, school, they have to learn and things like that. But you do want to make it fun when they get there because that, to me, tells the student right off the bat, Dan or Mr. Ebert and Mrs. Pannella really do like me, but I just have, when it's class, we have to be serious.
Right.
Things like that.
Right.
And it's good that you kind of balance that out because that shows the kid, and it'll definitely impact them more someday when they get older, that you do care about them. It's not anything personal when you're saying, so-and-so, do your work or pay attention or, you know what, you lost points today, stuff like that. You're really trying to, again, mold them into young adults in a lot of ways.
For sure. When like that's real life. When it's time to get down to business, it's time to work.
Get done. Yeah.
Work hard, play hard, kind of
thing.
Get it done.
Yeah.
Right. So let me ask you, Dan. I'll start with you. It's kind of hard to look ahead like this, but I mean, 10 years from now, do you still want to be teaching in some capacity?
100%.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, you talked about you weren't sure if you'd want to like be a math tutor or things like that. But let me ask you, I mean, it seems like to me you really love being in the classroom. I think that would be hard for you to kind of move away from that, but is that something that you may do someday?
I don't know. I don't think so. I don't know. Change is pretty hard for me, so like getting into this job was really, really difficult to kind of like settle in on and like, oh, this is what I am now. This is me. I like being in the classroom. If I changed anything, if there was a way I could go over to music but still have like a classroom, that'd be ideal. I don't know if I'm like too late for that.
Without having to go back and get 7 more degrees.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah. And Toni, I mean, obviously you've stayed in the classroom. You enjoy being in the classroom.
Yeah.
I mean, there's going to come a point, Toni, where, again, like anybody else, you're going to retire. I mean, would you still want to be a teacher in some capacity when you retire? And what that means to me, what I mean by that is if some kid needed to be tutored on the side, would you do something like that? I mean, would you still like to be teaching in some capacity?
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't rule it out.
Do you go cold turkey at
retirement? I might be able to go cold turkey. No, I have thought of like because we see retired teachers do it all the time. To come back and
we just had that
tutor.
At our school.
Yeah, they'll come back and they'll work in like the reading room as a tutor, where they're just taking groups, but it's a lot less responsibility and stress as being a classroom teacher. But you're still doing it. You know what I mean? You're still getting to like be with the kids and help the kids. And a lot of people do that. And a lot of people come back and sub and they do some like long-term subbing positions and stuff too. So I wouldn't say no. I don't know. Yeah, like that could be in the cards for me by the time I retire too.
Right.
So we'll have to see.
And I think what stands out the most about the commitment you both have is that teaching has changed over the years, and you've had to adjust with, like you said, the curriculum and things like that. Because I'm sure when you first taught, it was way different than it is now. But let me ask you, how difficult is it to make that change where you have to kind of, you're used to teaching one way and now you got to kind of switch it up a little bit?
It's hard.
It is.
Curriculums change a lot.
I think we're just expected to be so flexible that it's just kind of natural.
Yeah. You figure it out, and we do. But yeah, like even little things. Like I remember when we first got the smart boards and trying to like, on top of everything else you're doing every day, just being like, hey, here's your smart board, and being like, I don't, what does this do? Like, I don't even know what to do with this thing other than like project on it.
But again, I think that's why it's so important that you have a great relationship with one another, especially with Janine, with Grace, with Amanda, whoever else, because you can lean on each other, because the stress that it may be giving you, it's given Toni, it's given Janine. Everybody's learning something new. So I think that teachers working together is what makes it work, and that's why these kids are going to be so successful in life, because these teachers are willing to give 150%, and they're willing to work with one another, which is most important. Yeah, definitely. So, Dan, I'll start with you. You also have kids, so you have an everyday life. It doesn't just revolve around.
For sure.
It doesn't revolve around teaching. So you're with kids all day. You're with young kids all day. Then you go home to young kids. I mean, you're with kids probably in a 24-hour day. You're probably with kids 18 hours a day.
For sure.
So just talk about what that's like going from school to home, because your kids, guess what? They don't care that you've been teaching all day. They want this, they want that, they want to play, all that stuff.
It's challenging for sure. It's funny, and a little bit off of that, when we were talking about like you going into your mom's classroom, I was thinking about my own daughters like begging me to come into the classroom, and that's all she wants. I mean, she has 2 parents that are teachers. That's all she wants to do. But going home to that, it does have some challenging days, but I mean, these are like the best years.
Right.
They're 7 and 4, and it's great.
Right. And Toni, obviously your kids are grown up, but
big.
I mean, I've seen your daughter at the school a few times.
Yeah,
I mean,
she'll come when
she
she's
loves
around.
going. So,
Yeah.
I mean, as a mother, like anything else, you're proud not only what your kids are doing in their lives, but it's got to make you proud that they look up to you and they want to come and see you at work and things like that. And I mean, you've been doing this a long, long time now, and you saw your kids, they were born when you were teaching.
Yeah.
They grew up when you were teaching. They went to college when you were teaching. So, I mean, you've been through it all. Like, talk about just, being a mom more than anything else.
Yeah, it was a lot. When they were little, I remember it being a lot, like working all day with little kids and then going home to little kids. It's a tough thing. But now, my daughter now, she likes to still come in and see. I think just because she thinks it's, just to watch me interact with the kids, she thinks it's funny. She basically thinks I'm funny. So she's pretty entertained when she comes in. And plus, you go home, you talk about your class, right? Like you talk about these kids. They have all their little personalities, and I'll go home and tell funny stories or like who did what during the day. And they, you're kind of, my husband and my kids, they'll indirectly kind of feel like they know these kids. So when she can come to school and put a face to like a name, or she thinks it's pretty funny for her to see.
And that's the other thing too, when you're having a stressful day, kids, they have such innocence that they say things they don't even realize, and it's just so funny. I mean, I think about a kid in our program, and he cracks me up all the time because he's just a kid and he doesn't think about anything he says, but it comes out so funny. So that's got to help when you're going through those tough days, like if you're having a rough afternoon and then somebody says things like that. That's what being an educator is all about, because you're not just being their teacher. Like I said, you're impacting them, and it's got to make what you do, like you feel like every day when you come to work and when you leave work, you're making a difference. Yeah, I mean, I would think that's got to be the most rewarding thing.
Some of my favorite times during the day is when you like have them in a small group and you're reading something or working on something, you get off topic, right? You start conversations
Very
with
easy
them,
for me to do.
and you find yourself just like chit-chatting with them about something and just having a conversation. And those are some of my favorite moments, when you're like not even teaching them and they're asking you questions and you're asking them questions, or you're talking about what you did over the weekend, or, I mean, those moments are just as important, I feel like, as
100%.
the when you're actually like teaching them something. But yeah, it is. It's good to get to know them like as people and laugh with them.
It's like unstructured learning, I guess.
Yeah.
So before we go, Toni, I'll start with you. What would you think it's hard to pick one thing, but if you could pick one thing, what has been the most impactful thing that you've experienced as an educator?
Probably just the relationships you've made with these kids, and getting to see them grow up and, come back as seniors and hear about what they want to go do with their lives, or even just running into them outside of school. Like I was at a bakery one day and I like ran into a former student, and I almost wouldn't have recognized her, but she said something to me, and it's just so exciting to be like, oh my gosh, I remember you. And, and then you can just talk to them about what they're doing in their lives currently and think like, yeah, you had a hand in that, getting them there.
Yeah, I just had someone come in Shadow to see if it's something they wanted to be. And I explained it to them. I got really sucked into Humans of New York online.
Oh yeah, I know.
And
that.
I was telling him, I'm like, it's like a real life Humans of New York. Every year there's a whole new set of stories and situations of kids to learn about. So it's intriguing, and just to be like part of their life story is,
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's an honor, I guess. Yeah.
Right. Well, I want to thank you both for giving me a few minutes today. I really applaud the work that you both do. I've seen it day in and day out. And to me, you have the most important job in the world, because you have to prepare these kids for everyday life. Sometimes people don't realize that, but you both have to do that, and you do it so effortlessly, you do it so well. And I think what you both have been doing all these years is so remarkable. You've made a difference every day. And thank you for everything you do for these kids. And thank you both for giving me a few minutes today.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Mike.
Mike.
Thanks for
Thank
having
you.
us. This was
Thank
great.
you. Well, there you have it, folks. You just got to know Dan Ebert and Toni Pannella for this last hour. One of the hardest things in life is to be an educator. It may look easy. April and February break off, summer's off, all that stuff. But you know what? You have an important job that you have to do each and every day. Like I said many times, and I know it sounds like a broken record, you are shaping these kids for everyday life. These two have given 150% each and every year. They're dedicated and committed individuals whose only goal is to make these kids outstanding students, great leaders, and impactful children. They do it every day, and they should be applauded for the work they do. For Hometown Heroes, I'm Mike Kenichi saying good night, everyone.